It's the podcast presented by Bet365. We are part of the Volume Podcast Network. I am Chad Millman, Chief Content Officer of the Action Network. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my companion, my compadre, my BFF, professional bettor, Simon Hunter. Hello, Simon.
Hello, Chad. How we doing, brother?
It is potentially the most important announcement we will make all season long, Simon, because today we are announcing that the favorite $100,000 pro football pick'em contest is back. People can sign up starting today. We're going to give them all the details in just a second. On Thursday, we'll have our final episode before week one begins. Simon and I will cover all of our best bets for the 2024 NFL season. I think I've only stolen 3 or 4 from one of our guests today. And Simon, I also, over the weekend, was making some futures bets. I found a bet, 2 bets, that I don't think are on your list. I think they're definitely on one of our guest lists, but I don't think they're on your list. And I'm so excited to talk about them on Thursday. Today, we are celebrating week 1 of the college football season with 2 of our favorite Action Network colleagues. They are actual OGs. This is the 7th season of them serving as the lifeblood of Action's college football coverage. You can hear them every single week on their beloved college football podcast, Big Bets on Campus, and the new BBOC YouTube channel. You can also catch them live on Saturdays with Brett McMurphy and Mike Calabrese for our BBOC live show. Also on the BBOC YouTube channel. Folks have to go check it out. Colin Wilson and Stucky College Football is back, boys. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chad. It's good to see Stucky here. I always love his over-the-ear headphones. I want to get me a pair instead of these rinky-dink AirPods.
Bitch buds. It's actually, Chad, it's actually the 8th season. Before we were actually
the producer. I only read the script, Stuck. Blame the producer.
He wasn't producing then. Before we were Action Network, when we first started, we were sportsaction.io and the app. And we had a podcast on there called Degen and Juice. It was a really bad producer who missed a lot of our episodes, just wouldn't show up. And it was we upgraded there significantly, not to give too much credit to Matt Mitchell, but yeah, Degen and Juice was our original podcast. And then we have smoothly transitioned to Big Bets on Campus since. So really the 8th year together previewing college football, and it's a labor of love. And now the sport has certainly evolved since.
Well, listen, one of the first things I listened to when I decided to ditch ESPN and join what was not even yet the Action Network, because we hadn't come up with a name and didn't have a staff or employees or an office or anything, was Degen and Juice with you and Colin. And I remember I listened to it. I was in my kitchen. I took out my AirPods. I said to my wife, I go, I can't believe I bet my career on some dude.
On Degen and Juice.
On some dude whose name I don't even know that they call Stucky, and another dude whose real job is like some kind of engineer, consultant. I don't even know what he does, but this is where we are. And look where we are. 8 years later, boys. We're just flying high. As a reminder, the Favorites Podcast is presented by Bet365. Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. That's why you get more boosts with them than with anyone else. Every day they power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more. Bet365 boosts specific markets, your winnings, and even parlays, and they don't stop there. Keep an eye out for their biggest and best odds with the incredible Super Boost. Check out the boost and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, North Carolina, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, or 18 and older in Kentucky. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, restrictions apply. All right, no more dilly-dally. As I said, our free Favorites Podcast $100,000 Pro Football Pick'em contest presented by Bet365 is officially back. If you guys are new to the show, we ran a totally free, it is free, NFL Pick'em contest. 5 picks against the spread every single week. We awarded more than $100,000 in cash prizes to our listeners, including a first place prize of $40,000. We're running it back, baby. Same website. Sign up. favorites.actionnetwork.com. Totally free to play. 5 picks each week. There is a Monday Night Football tiebreaker. Top 10 finishers get paid. First place, $40,000. Every single week, the first place finisher gets $1,000. But if you finish first and you nail the tiebreaker exactly, you get $2,000. No catch. You have nothing to lose. I can't emphasize enough. If you listen to this show, it probably means you are predisposed to liking betting. If you listen to this show and you don't sign up for a free pick'em contest to compete against me and Simon, who are in the contest, we will talk about our picks, what we are going to land on. It is the spine of our show during the season. If you don't go to favorites.actionnetwork.com, then you must not like a chance to win free money, or you must not feel good about your ability to pick 5 games against the spread. This is your chance to prove to yourself that you can do it, that you can commit to a season-long contest. Favorites.actionnetwork.com. Last year, we had 12,000 people sign up. We would like to have more this year. We really want to impress our friends at Bet365. All right, Matt Mitchell, I'm sure he's going to say something that won't alienate anybody, but he is going to set up this entire contest. Here he is with more details.
Thank you, Chad. Obviously very excited that we've launched, as you and everyone listening can imagine, launching a contest where we give away $100,000 of Bet365's money takes a tremendous amount of work. So I want to thank everyone for their patience. I'm going to quickly answer the most consistent questions I get about the contest. So if you're listening out there, feel free to, rewind and listen back later. So here we go. First, how do I sign up and make picks? You go to favorites.actionnetwork.com. If you signed up last year, you can use the exact same credentials if you want. Can I make my week 1 picks now? Yes. In fact, you should do that as soon as I'm done talking. Am I eligible to participate in this contest? That's a great question. If you are a U.S. resident, if you're at least 21 years old right now, today, and if you live in Washington, D.C., or any American state except Rhode Island or Washington State, congrats! You're eligible to participate and win cash prizes. Matt, why can't I play if I'm only 19 years old, or if I live in Washington State or Rhode Island or Sri Lanka or Serbia or whatever? Dude, I have no idea. Those are the rules. I'm not an attorney. If you're upset, contact your attorney general or your ambassador or Judge Judy or whatever. Don't complain to me. I have no control over it. I'm just a man trying to give away $100,000. Can I change my picks after I've made them? Yes, you can change your picks as many times as you want until 1 p.m. on Sundays. You get a confirmation email every time you confirm your picks. And remember, when you sign up, use an email that you actually check, because it's the only way we can contact you if you win a cash prize. Do the lines in the contest change? Yes, the spreads in the contest will move with the market. So if you make picks on, say, a Thursday and want to change any one of your picks on Sunday, you must make all 5 of your picks again at whatever the current spreads are. And remember, there are no pushes in the contest. These are contest lines, so they'll all be half-point lines. Your picks win or they lose. What about ties? Each week, there is a tiebreaker question. It will almost always be total passing yards on Monday Night Football. Each week, there is a $1,000 weekly prize, like Chad said. To win it, you probably need to go 5-0 and get very close to the tiebreaker. If you go 5-0 and you nail the tiebreaker exactly, that prize becomes $2,000. And if after the tiebreaker, 2 or more entries are still tied, the winner is the entry who submitted first. And for the season-long contest and that fight for the $40,000 first place prize, the tiebreaker is your total tiebreaker differential over the course of the season. So if you want the best chance at the big money, please take the tiebreaker seriously. And finally, are there any weird exceptions that I should know about? Yes, there is one. We will drop your lowest weekly score after week 5. So if, let's say you sign up today, you make your picks every week, and then 1 week between week 1 and week 5, you absolutely eat shit and you go 1-4 or 0-5. Don't worry, dry your eyes, because everyone's lowest score is erased from the contest after week 5 concludes. And after that point, it's a race to the finish. That's it, folks. Go to favorites.actionnetwork.com to sign up. And I wish everyone the best of luck.
I was afraid you were going to turn everybody off there, Matt Mitchell, because sometimes you can get angry at, silly questions, and even when people aren't asking them. So I think you did a nice job there. We haven't even announced the contest. We've already got hundreds of people signed up. I want to get to 12,000. That's what I'm saying. We had a huge goal last year. Big, hairy goal. I think we wanted to get to like 4,000. We got to 12. Let's see what we can do with a bigger show this year. More listeners, giving away $100,000. If you listen to the show, you like to bet, favorites.actionnetwork.com. All right, finally.
Chad, one quick thing.
Stuck.
Number one, saying big, hairy, aggressive goal gives me bad flashbacks to my time in corporate America, which was the BAGs. But one, I don't know if you mentioned it, Mitchell, but one entry per person, right?
That's correct. 1 entry per person. That's a good call out.
Wow. Matt Mitchell getting edited and produced by Stuckey. See what happens?
This is a fucking nightmare. Yeah, I'll cut all this from the pod.
Man, Stuckey is becoming a real professional. All right, guys. College football is here. We had a great start this past weekend. I have questions about Florida State. People seem to love to hate Florida State. But before we even get to that, I know Simon is chomping at the bit to ask about the playoff. Simon, you've been patiently waiting while we went through our contest rigmarole. Please ask your question.
Simon, you are muted, unfortunately.
I was going to say, my guy, Stuckey, who loves it more than anyone else I know. My man's always doing college football, college basketball, college baseball. I mean, him and Colin are all in on it. Stuckey, how do you feel about the college playoffs, brother? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you going to miss the way it was, or are you just going to embrace the change and see what it's going to become?
I personally love it. First of all, it doesn't matter what as a bettor, it doesn't matter just tell me what the format is, tell me who's playing, and we'll try to find some winners. Yeah. But I actually think it's going to add more excitement. It'll make conference championship weekend more exciting, more meaningful. The gap between, conference championship weekend and then the next meaningful college football game shrinks. And so I think, look, there's going to be some games that don't mean as much at the upper echelon of teams, you can afford to drop a game. But overall, I think it's going to increase the amount of meaningful games, right? And you have this group of 5 race for that highest ranked team to get in. So I personally love it. I think it's going to be exciting. From a betting perspective, I am looking forward to this to make or miss a playoff market. Curious to see how often this market stays up and is up throughout the season. I would imagine it gets updated weekly. New market for odds makers too. So there could be some opportunity there after teams lose. So I'm looking forward to breaking that down, because in the past it was just all right, it's one of these, these 5 teams are going to be one of these 5 teams are all going to make the 4 spots. And it's going to be one of these 2 teams that make the college football playoff. The futures market really wasn't intriguing in college football, but now with this make a playoff market, I think it just adds a lot of intrigue. So I'm looking forward to it. The one thing I'm not is just from a pure workload perspective. I do college basketball too. With football, they just keep extending seasons. The NFL is probably going to add a game. College football is going longer. So that overlap with college basketball gets more difficult. So yeah, trying to figure that out is going to be a logistical nightmare, but it is what it is. It's a labor of love. So I'm looking forward to it.
Colin, should we assume that the SEC and the Big Ten teams are the favorites to win the college football title and advance in the college football playoffs and dominate the entries in the college football playoffs?
Absolutely. Listen, we didn't need 12 teams to figure out who's the best and should compete for the national championship. We were doing fine with 4. Everybody knew the 5th seed could never win the national title. That's my only complaint. The one thing that I love about this is that now we have meaningful games that are happening before Christmas, because bowl season was essentially broken. Everybody was opting out. Coaches were on their way. It interrupted the recruiting cycle that coaches were more focused on. The portals mixed in there. I mean, college football is just a mess right now with the schedule. So I am happy that we have meaningful games before Christmas, meaningful games on New Year's Day, and then we continue into the NFL playoffs. So I love it from the excitement perspective. To me, the Big Ten and the SEC, now that they've grown, they're just going to gobble up everything else. ACC, Big 12. I don't think the Big 12 is going to produce any national championship contender whatsoever, although I do think it's the most exciting conference out of the Power Four. The SEC and the Big Ten, I expect to take all the spots in the semifinal. But I will say this about the college football playoff. With these new rule changes, there is an opportunity to gamble. And I'm going to say right now that the 5th seed, whoever gets the 5th seed, they are automatically going to the semifinals. Because if you think about it, the Big Ten and the SEC are so good. One of them is going to fill the 5th seed. And then the ACC and the Big 12 are going to fill the 3 and 4. So if you're the 5 seed, you're going to get to host a group of 5 team. Spread's going to be like 24. And then you're going to play the conference champion from the Big 12 or the ACC. You're going to be favored again as a 5 seed from the SEC or the Big 10. The 5 seed to me is in the penthouse. Whoever you can determine it's going to be in that spot, that's a national title future I'm going to make once we know what the playoff is.
All right. A lot of conversation about Oregon, top 3 in the country, according to the AP, top 25, they're 3rd. Ohio State 2nd. Both of them behind Georgia. So you've got SEC, Big Ten, including a new entry to the Big Ten, Oregon. A lot of people saying they could be the best team in the Big Ten. Meanwhile, Ohio State has basically spent $20 million to build a super team. Colin, if I'm not mistaken, I believe you went to media days for the Big Ten. Did you not? Am I not remembering that right? When you come out of media days, are you thinking Ohio State has spent their money well? Oregon is going to be the team to beat? Give me your prediction, because I think this is the most interesting conference.
Well, yeah, Oregon and Ohio State are probably going to be a pick in Eugene when they play each other, but Oregon is the better team by far. I think they have a better quarterback because, Will Howard can't throw it past 20 yards. Plus, he's not really durable. Dylan Gabriel is a much better quarterback, but there is a huge separation at the skill positions between these two teams. Plus, Dan Lanning has been pulling trench players for years, which Mario Cristobal already was up to Eugene. They can compete at an SEC level. Dan Lanning has taken everything he learned from Kirby Smart at Georgia and applied it to Oregon. Just get the kids up there to see how beautiful that whole area of the country is. Kids are sticking around. Oregon, I believe, is the more disciplined team, the more talented team, the better coach team. They're not going to have any locker room problems. I think Ohio State will. So I'm definitely quack on the Ducks this year.
Stuck?
Yeah, I'm much higher on Ohio State than Colin. I mean, the defense is absolutely loaded. That's what I think is going to carry this team. I mean, just the experience and talent that they have, and led by one of the better coordinators in all of college football. I think there are some questions at quarterback, but I think they've upgraded. That's kind of the one major question mark for me on this team, is just like, what is the ceiling of their quarterback position? But to me, what's interesting is there's 3 clear-cut teams in that tier 1 that you mentioned in Georgia, Ohio State, and Oregon. And I think in this new landscape of college football, I do think that there's, it's harder to build a team that is so much more dominant than, all the other teams, because, you're going to have some guys that leave to go play at some other Power 5 schools. But I'm curious to see who can make that leap and potentially jump up into that tier 1. A team I have my questions about in Miami has a ton of talent. They would be the team from the ACC that has the ceiling. Penn State, James Franklin can't win a big game, but can Drew Aller take the next step with a fantastic offensive coordinator hire? and Andy Kotelnicki from Kansas. That offense should look a lot better. The defense is going to be good. So there's that second tier who's going to kind of step up. And, there's obviously some teams in the SEC that are in the mix. But, to go back to your original question, yeah, this is an SEC and Big Ten conversation for the national title.
And I mean, speaking of Penn State, that week 1, West Virginia, that feels like that's going to decide a lot of their season. I mean, a little fun fact with me, I am a dropout of WU. So I do pull for WU in this week 1 matchup. But speaking of these playoff teams, guys, am I crazy? Like, is Bama really minus 115 to make the playoffs? Out of 12 teams, are they really not one of the 12 that are going to make it? I feel like not too much is being put on Nick Saban leaving. I don't think enough respect's being paid to the coach that's walking into this team. Like, to me, this is a man that has exceeded all expectations his whole career. And now he's come from Washington down to Alabama. Am I missing the mark here, Stuck? Or are they properly priced at minus 115 to be making the playoffs?
You said you dropped out of WVU. Did they even notice there in Morgantown if you don't show up to class?
We call that graduating. When you drop out of WVU, we call that graduating.
So yeah, I mean, look, Alabama, Colin has hotter takes on Alabama than me. I think they're a tad overvalued. I think they should be like just slightly plus money. But I love the hire. They didn't lose as much to the portal as I thought they would. They're still going to be in the mix, but Colin, I think, has hotter takes on Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, before I get to Alabama, I just have to say the state of Arkansas's moonshine is better than West Virginia's moonshine. Just, sampling that in my life.
Where's Mountain Dew from? West Virginia.
It's true. Alabama, to me, this is a perfect marriage of a head coach and a quarterback. You have Kalen DeBoer, who is somewhere around 110 and 12 lifetime record wherever he's been. And what you're doing is you're taking what he does from an offensive perspective, runs all of these crazy routes and looks for deep shots and explosive plays. He's just really good at stretching the field, spacing it out. And who's his quarterback? Jalen Milroe. I can't get over these numbers from Jalen Milroe. He had about 26 big-time throws over 20 yards, 0 turnover-worthy plays on throws over 20 yards. It is insane what Jalen Milroe can do from a deep ball perspective. You just go back and think about that Iron Bowl game that saved their entire season, got them into the playoff. So I love Alabama from the perspective. I think that they can win the SEC. I think they're much better than a lot of people are predicting. They think that Saban was out, a couple transfers left. Listen, I think they're not any worse than what they were last year. I think Jalen Milroe is going to be improved, and I think Kalen DeBoer is a great head coach for his skill set. So I love Alabama.
Just when I thought Colin couldn't become more of a homer, before we come onto the show, he says Arkansas basketball is winning the national title. One of his favorite win totals is Arkansas college football. Every year he says Arkansas college baseball is going to win the College World Series, and they never do. And now he's trying to claim that Arkansas has the best moonshine in the United States. Better than the states in
someone said something.
Better than the states in Appalachia. I mean, the backwoods there, where that's like Tennessee, Virginia, Kentucky, West Virginia, North Carolina. Come on, now you're claiming moonshine in Arkansas.
Ours is made in a bathtub, not in the mountains. It's better.
Listen. One year, I went down to Oxford, Mississippi, for an Ole Miss football game. And I stayed with my buddy, Wright Thompson, who is a writer for ESPN. There is nobody more Southern who drips the Southern charm, ethos, culture than Wright. It is like stepping back in time. We went to a party with one of Wright's friends. He does this show on the SEC network that is all about food and Southern culture with a guy named John T. Edge. It was John T. Edge's house. He had a coconut moonshine. All I know is I can vaguely remember waking up the next day in a pile of drool with one leg on the floor, half my body on the couch. And I think my buddy had co-opted my Twitter feed and was sending DMs to people we went to high school with. That's all I remember when we talk about moonshine. And by the way, I will say it was delicious coconut moonshine.
There you go.
Can't say I've ever had it. I'm going to try it.
Speaking of Ole Miss, guys, Ole Miss, all of a sudden, everybody is talking about it. You watch College Game Day, Lane and Nick Saban is even saying nice things about Lane Kiffin and that they've got a really good team. Is this the year? I think they're 6th in the AP rank right now. is this the year that Ole Miss can actually be relevant beyond October? Is Ole Miss a playoff team? Stuck, I'll start with you.
They have the potential to. I mean, what they're doing in the portal, it's going to increase the variance, and that's one thing that is going to be difficult for all bettors now. Even more college football week 1, there's always a ton of variance, but even more so now with all of the roster turnover, the coaching turnover, the transfer portal. Now you have these lower level teams that are reaching into FCS, JUCO ranks. Like, makes these player evaluation and team evaluation much more difficult. So, especially if you're a new bettor, just always tread lightly, knowing that, because the variance is just through the roof. Ole Miss embodies that. Just the guys that they bring in from the portal, they have the best portal class in the country. So from a talent perspective, they're right there. They're building up their trenches too. That's what's really held them back and kind of kept them from that upper echelon in the SEC, a step behind the Georgias and Alabamas. But they're getting closer and they're closing the gap. And they're much more well coached on the defensive side of the ball as well. But the question is, how do all these pieces fit together? Do they gel? Do they mesh? Like a couple of years ago when Ole Miss at the portal didn't work as well as last year. And last year, look, it was a really successful season, but they did get pretty fortunate in a lot of close games. But this team, high variance team. So I think instead of betting them to make the college football playoff, I would look more on the tails to bet Ole Miss because the potential is there, but there's questions. How does it come together? What does it look like? And there are many teams in college football that are like that going into this year. Makes handicapping week 1 much more difficult, increases the variance, exponentially. But yes, Ole Miss is definitely a player.
Colin.
Yeah, I have him as a 7 seed in my 12-team playoff.
Oh, I wasn't going to ask you about Ole Miss, but go ahead.
Oh, I was just.
I thought you had Florida State as your 7 seed. Your bracket's already busted.
Florida State's all 12 of my seeds. So I think, listen, I've said this a billion times. The transfer portal, just because you win it doesn't mean you're winning championships. LSU won it with Jaden Daniels a couple of years ago. They didn't win the SEC championship. Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley won the portal a couple of years ago with USC. They didn't win the Pac-12, or they didn't make it to the college football playoff. It doesn't win championships automatically. Like, Ole Miss still had a 50-burger spotted on them by Georgia last year and lost by 35. That is a massive gap. And when you go and look in that game, it was their star right tackle that was injured, and Ole Miss just could not pull outside zone. They couldn't get any protection for Jackson Dart. I do like Ole Miss in general. Jackson Dart had major spikes in his efficiency in his passing last year, especially in mid-range. So I do like them as a team. But at the same time, Stuck is right. Like, you have to build trench depth. You have to have the best players. And I'm just not sure they are there to rattle off 3 or 4 wins in a row, because what Ole Miss is right now with all these wins in the portal, they're essentially an Olympic basketball team full of NBA stars that don't play together during the season. That's exactly what Ole Miss is.
All right. Yeah. So you just mentioned Florida State. Of course, they go out, they lose in the last second, week 1, to Georgia Tech. Florida State, since last year, has become one of those programs that is just so polarizing because of what happened with the BCS or the college football playoff and not making the Final Four and all that kind of stuff. Colin, now that they've lost, do you feel like they are worthy of the hate and ridicule that they get?
They deserve it, but they can correct it. They missed 11 tackles in that game. You don't want double-digit missed tackles in a game. I know it was wet, but Georgia Tech didn't have those problems missing tackles. I think, the secondary took really bad angles. They were not a bad tackling unit last year. They just got whooped. And the handicap on the game was that Florida State is so much more experienced and talented in the trench, especially on the offensive line. They should just bulldoze over Georgia Tech. The first drive, 7 plays, 75 yards, it looked exactly like that. And then I don't know what happened. I don't know who pulled the plug on the electricity, because Florida State never rebounded after that first drive. They got whooped at the point of attack. I think that goes to your head coach. Brent Key for Georgia Tech is a former offensive lineman. He's just gritty, grinding. Florida State, sorry, you're soft. And if you behave like this with missed tackles and you can't, you take bad angles in the secondary, you're going to get beat 2 or 3 more times. So they deserve the hate, but they do have issues that can be corrected.
Not a quarterback.
Right.
Yeah, that's a classic case of week 0, right? Like, this team just flew 12 hours from Florida to Ireland, and they didn't get off the plane. It felt like what you guys just said. That first drive, and it kind of fell apart. Now, because of their falling apart here, what do you think, Stuck? Is this Clemson's time to shine here? I hate Clemson. I hate their head coach. I hate everything about them. Is this now their time to run this division again, where it's like, okay, the people think that Clemson's kind of messed up here because not really embracing the whole transfer portal. Are they still the team to beat, or are they kind of left for dead here?
Yeah, I think this is like a make or break year for Dabo, and I think it might start to get more difficult for Clemson to keep up, but they still have a really talented team. It's year 2 of their coordinator, like the post-hype of Garrett Riley, who came over from TCU, year 2 of Cade Klubnik. Got a really good offensive line coach that they brought in. I think the offensive line will be better. Center's still a big question mark. The defense, is always going to be good. It's developed well. They played more freshmen than any team in the country last year. I bet Clemson to win the ACC. I bet them to go to the college football playoff. They're definitely falling a step behind. I don't think they have like national title ceiling,
right?
But I do like them to win the ACC. They are now favorites to win the ACC after what Florida State did last week. Florida State, they just don't have this. They don't have the ceiling because their quarterback play, the wide receiver play is underwhelming too. If you could stop the run, force DJU to throw it, especially in known passing downs, I don't think they have the solutions there. And they couldn't even, their strength is supposed to be their run game, the offensive line. They couldn't even do that against Georgia Tech. Well, that's extremely problematic. And then this overhyped defensive line was not great. The linebackers were bad. So, yeah, I think Florida State might be in trouble. Although I might buy them if this line keeps going down against Boston College in week 1. But, yeah, I do think Clemson's going to win the ACC this year. I think it's a buy on them. A sell on Florida State was part of that as well, which we saw last Monday. Value's kind of been sucked out of the number. But I do think Clemson is eventually going to come out on top in the ACC. But you look at what I think you mentioned Ole Miss in the transfer portal, and Colin alluded to this point. I think the ideal national title contender in the upper elite echelon, what you're seeing with teams like Georgia, like Oregon, like Ohio State, et cetera, is you have really good recruiting classes. You have really good player development, right? And then you supplement where your holes are after NFL graduation, especially if you had like one position with the transfer portal. Right, that's kind of the ideal formula to reach that elite tier. Ole Miss is going the extreme transfer portal route. Clemson, where I think that there's just a major deficiency right now, is they're not addressing those team needs. Like, go out and get a center, go out and get a proven wide receiver commodity, maybe add some help in the secondary. In the portal, 3 or 4 guys that were starters, right? And then all of a sudden, your roster becomes elevated. It was only Clemson and the service academies, which that didn't have an addition from the transfer portal. So I do like Clemson to win the ACC, but I don't think that they have that ceiling to win a national title. And part of that is they're not taking advantage of the portal to fill some of those roster holes, depth, and just elevating the overall talent profile of their team.
You mentioned Florida State, you mentioned BC, week 1, huge slate. It's the only weekend of the year, it feels like, including the playoffs, where college football is going to get every football fan's attention because they are going Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, all day, every day, 5 days. We got college football. Thursday, Friday. Colin, give me your picks.
We're going to take UNC on the money line over Minnesota. There's some injury information starting to leak out with Minnesota, specifically their running back Darius Taylor might not be available. What is Minnesota's offense? Running the ball like 70% of the time, like a service academy. So, what that's going to do, their injuries are going to put their new quarterback, New Hampshire's Max Brosmer, under the spotlight to try and do everything. If you go and break down his numbers at New Hampshire, yes, I did. In 4 years at New Hampshire, only 10% of his passes go beyond 20 yards. He is a dink and dunk quarterback in a Minnesota offense that has no explosiveness whatsoever, with a brand new defensive coordinator. And on the other side of the ball, you got Omarion Hampton. You guys, Simon, Chad, you guys will be talking about him in the NFL often. He is that good. So I love North Carolina opening night, Thursday night.
By the way, it should surprise no one. And again, listen to Colin and Stuck in the BBOC pods, watch them on the BBOC YouTube channel, listen to them and watch them on the BBOC live show on Saturday mornings when they preview and make picks for all the games. Surprise no one. that Colin has broken down the film on Minnesota's transfer quarterback from UNH. This is a guy who this past Saturday, our second most read story on actionnetwork.com was his write-up of Montana State and its historic spread against New Mexico, a game that Montana State ultimately won. Colin goes deep, deep, deep into the well on college football. Stuck, do you have a favorite? I'm just talking Thursday, Friday. Simon's going to ask you about Saturday. I just want Thursday, Friday.
Yeah, I laid it with Michigan State. Need under 2 touchdowns, but I very low on this FAU team, who I think wants to go faster, which is good if you want to bet a favorite with more possessions. But their starting quarterback, Cam Fancher, not a fan of. Don't think he can take advantage of Michigan State's secondary, which is really where the biggest questions are on that roster. You know, Michigan State, new head coach, Jonathan Smith, who I'm a huge fan of, comes in from Oregon State, brings with him his very talented quarterback, Aiden Childs, his center, his tight end, you know, his offensive coordinator's offensive line coach. Still questions on that offensive line, but I do think that Michigan State will be able to run it on FAU. And look, there's been a lot of negativity around this Michigan State program. Their fans are starving for just like some optimism. So I think that home opener against FAU, they want to put up a number here. And I'm just not buying what FAU is selling this year. That a lot of roster turnover, a lot of questions. And I just don't trust the quarterback to really take advantage of Michigan State. Don't really love the Thursday and Friday slate. Other than that, looking at that UNC Minnesota game, waiting on some injury info, the total ticked up today. Might potentially look at the under there over 51. Minnesota's really slow. They did upgrade a quarterback, I think, with Brosner, but he's making the jump from FCS to FBS. Threw a lot of short passes in FCS, was successful doing so. But Fleck just wants to run the ball, bleed the clock. And UNC going to use 2 quarterbacks. Last year, these 2 teams played 31-14, I think. Didn't go over this number. The number was about the same. They had Drake May, who threw for 400 yards and took advantage of that Minnesota secondary. I'm not sure the UNC 2 QB system and a rebuilt offensive line can take advantage of the Minnesota secondary. I kind of like their front to shut down Hampton, their running back. So a lot of uncertainty in this game with so much new. There's injury questions, no depth charts. And so it's an interesting game. But one thing to keep in mind is we saw the pace go down last week for certain teams using the helmet communication. So that's something to keep in mind. Plays just taking longer as quarterbacks adjust. You saw this a lot with Haynes King and Georgia Tech. You might see that more frequently, especially early on in the season. Both teams also have new defensive coordinators. I think UNC upgraded in that department with Jeff Collins. Both defenses trying to simplify what they do, which I think could limit explosives, which are issues for both these last year. So looking at the under there, and then North Dakota State, Colorado is a really interesting game. North Dakota State has some injuries that I'm monitoring, but there's a lot of uncertainty. Week 1, new rosters, injuries, potential suspensions, new staffs. It's what makes, I just can't wait to see these games, dive into what I saw, and start the journey of the 2024 college football betting season.
Listen, if Colorado loses, I'm hearing rumors that Dion is going to be so upset and offended, he's going to ban everybody from the state of North Dakota from entering the state of Colorado. That's how much power he has, and that's how sensitive Deion Sanders apparently is. Simon?
Yeah, I can't wait for Deion to be coaching the Cowboys next year, Chad.
No joke.
So, I'm just hearing you talk about it's going to be fired up stuck. So we'll go with Colin here for Saturday. Who we betting? Obviously, you know where I'm going. West Virginia money line against Penn State. I think they're up to 8.5 as a dog. In Morgantown, you can still get 2 rum and cokes for $4. I mean, it's crazy. The right now they're the Morgantown and making us 8.5 dog. Who are we going with on Saturday, Colin? Like, who's jumping out to you? Obviously, the dogs ruled week 0. Do we see that same trend continue here in week 1?
Well, in the award-winning Action Network app, you can follow me and see that an hour ago I placed a nice fat bet on Clemson plus 7.5 in the first half against Georgia. And there's a lot of suspensions here coming for Georgia. There's been some DUIs. There's been some reckless driving. There's some charges going on both sides of the ball with a linebacker. More importantly, their running back, Trevor Etienne, who comes in from Florida. And then in that running back depth chart for Georgia, they're also missing one of their best running backs, and Rob Robinson. So he's got a toe injury that he had to have surgery on. So for Georgia, this is going to turn into a complete one-dimensional passing attack, which everything I say bad about Georgia, it's like they have the best recruits in the nation. Like they're going to be able to backfill, but the depth is a concern there. The depth on the defensive line is actually a concern too. They took Mikael Williams, with their best player on defense, and pushed him out to outside linebacker. They're having injury situations on the defensive tackle in the interior that Clemson can absolutely maul them with Phil Maffa, and that offensive line. They have been unbelievable. And I'll say this about Cade Klubnik, because he cost Stuckey and I a lot of money over the years, but last year, after week 8 against Miami, something flipped in Garrett Riley's offense. He had 17 turnover-worthy plays last year, only 4 of them in the last 5 weeks. I mean, they just absolutely manhandled everybody. Klubnik was a different quarterback the last 5 games of last year. I think he's grasped Riley's offense. To me, Georgia has too many questions coming into this game. Suspensions are coming, which will move the line. I'm acting now and taking Clemson plus 7.5 because they feel completely disrespected, and they shouldn't be with the talent they have. I agree with Stuck on the depth problem. That will show up in the playoff later in the year, but not in game 1.
What do you think, Stuck, for Saturday?
I've been saying all summer I love A&M against Notre Dame. It's out to 3 now, not as much value, but I would still, I would wait. There might be some buyback on Notre Dame, but Notre Dame's offensive line situation is dire. I really love the upgrade at coaching for Texas A&M, bringing in Mike Elko for Jimbo Fisher. Could be a much more serious team. This team still has a ton of talent. They've had a ton of talent in the past couple of years, but the coaching, I think, really held them back. Really fascinating matchup in this game is Notre Dame's quarterback, Riley Leonard, taking on Mike Elko. They were at Duke last year. A lot of talk about who does that give the edge to, the quarterback or the coach that knew him? Elko in his presser, obviously he said this, but he said it's actually Leonard because he's used to seeing his defenses, but he also knows his strengths and weaknesses. But Notre Dame, losing 2 tackles to the NFL, they lost their projected starting left tackle to an injury. They're going to be starting all underclassmen on that offensive line. That's a problem, especially in College Station and against a defensive line that had a lot of turnover. They still have all dudes who could play on Sunday up there. So yeah, I like A&M. Way off the radar. I'll do this for our producer, Matt Mitchell, since I corrected him earlier. Eat 'em up, Cats. If you want to go way off, the radar and bet a group of 5 game, Sam Houston State plus catching double digits against Rice. I think Rice is really going to miss McCaffrey. They're not a team that I like to back as a bigger favorite with the way that they play. Sam Houston State upgraded at quarterback, and it was a team that transitioned to FBS last year, really struggled early, started to figure it out, come on late. They're very well coached. I like them catching double digits against Rice in a all Texas matchup. So a little off the radar there.
2 more categories I want to cover. First, Heisman. We mentioned Jackson Dart, who has the most Damon Runyon-esque name in all of college football. Absolutely perfect at Ole Miss. When you guys survey the field, where is the Heisman value? Colin, you're first.
I'm going to go Miller Moss at USC. Listen, I think if there's one team that's sitting around the 6.5, 7 win range that can absolutely go over that, and their ceilings around 9 or 10 wins, it's going to be USC. I know we're talking Heisman, but follow me here. The hire of Danton Lynn as their defensive coordinator is going to get a lot more stops. It's going to make a lot better USC defense, which is going to give more possessions to the offense. Miller Moss was perfect in the Holiday Bowl, 372 yards, 6 touchdowns against a good Louisville defense. And now he's got maybe the most explosive receiver in college football with Zachariah Branch and a Lincoln Riley offense. If USC can get to 9 wins, which I think is possible, he's in the conversation. He's 40, 50 to 1 out there. So that I wanted to go long shot, not something short. So that would be my pick.
Stuck?
Well, as one of the 7,000 esteemed Heisman voters, I do not bet on the Heisman. So yeah, I don't, not a market that I spend a lot of time on. I don't think there's a ton of value. It was a market that I think used to have more value in the past. If you wanted a long shot to look at, maybe a guy I mentioned earlier, Drew Aller, and you're betting on Kotelnicki, taking that offense to the next level, and Aller taking that next step. Guy who has all the talent. can make all the throws. Now he's just going to have an offense that is made so easy for him. And it's a team with upside that should get to the college football playoff. So, if you're looking in the long shot, I think, he's 50 to 1-ish if you wanted to throw some couch change on it, but not a market I really spend time on.
Drew Aller, Penn State quarterback, by the way.
All right, Stuck. So you got a favorite future for us then for the whole college football season? Like, you got one that really jumps out to you that really haven't given out, or our fans could jump on at this point?
Well, I'm going to be selfish and I'm going to promote my MAC manifesto, which I spend a ton of time on every year. So go check that out. Bowling Green. I go through every team. All the depth charts came out today. I go through again and update all of the notes on offense, defense, special teams based on the depth charts. Spend a lot of time on it. It's a really good resource just to update yourself on the MAC. I'll do it again in the midseason before midweek MACtion returns. But I like Bowling Green to win the MAC. And I go really in depth in the manifesto. So I'll tease that. Check it out.
Colin?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I love that pick. I'm going to go with a win total. I'm going to go off the beaten path here because we talked about so much of this on our last BBOC podcast, but I did not mention San Diego State under 5.5. If you guys remember a little MAC football on Tuesday nights, Kent State used to be called Flash Fast. Well, that coach, Sean Lewis, went to Colorado last year, was demoted midseason from his offensive coordinator position. Now he's kind of found his way at San Diego State. He has the worst experience numbers on both sides of the ball. But I talked to Sean Lewis at Media Day, at Mountain West Media Day in Las Vegas, and he told me,
cash your tickets.
Yeah, cash your tickets. He told me it doesn't matter who the players are, it doesn't matter what their style is, it doesn't matter where they come from. We're running Aztec fast. We're going to go as fast as possible on offense. We're just going to try to contain explosives on defense. But more importantly, this schedule is brutal for them because they are really at 5.5. I project them to be double-digit underdogs in 6 games, meaning they have to win the rest of the schedule, and I only have them favorites in 2 other games, Central Michigan and Texas A&M Commerce. So San Diego State under 5.5, absolutely the future. But from a weekly perspective, yes, you're going to see Aztec overs in the app every week, and I'm going to get trolled by Stuckey every week, and I love it.
Listen to me. If you had told me 8 years ago that this rando engineer, computer scientist, consultant doing some Degen and Juice podcast I had bet my life was going to work is now spending the entirety of Action Network's travel budget going to media days, including those for whatever godforsaken conference San Diego State is playing in, and loving it, I would have said not a chance. That was the longest of long shots, but yet here we are. Colin Wilson.
I should get a vacation. Like, I've never been to a media day. I should get a vacation paid for or something every summer. We got to talk about that.
I completely agree. We don't do enough for you. Whatever you want, Stuckey, you can have. Colin Wilson, Stuckey, everyone listen to the BBOC pods throughout the week, not just with those two, but with our entire network of college football stars. Plus, subscribe to the BBOC channel on YouTube. It's outstanding. It will have college football. It will have men's college basketball, women's college basketball. We will transition into college baseball. All of that has become so big for the betting community. We've created an entirely new channel dedicated just to that. Also, don't forget, if you are listening to this show and you like to make picks and you like the chance to win free money in the tens of thousands of dollars, favorites.actionnetwork.com. Go sign up. It will be a blast. You will be competing with me and Simon, favorites.actionnetwork.com. Season-long pick'em, weekly prizes, $40K to the winner of the season-long contest. Hit pause on the pod right now. Go sign up, favorites.actionnetwork.com. As a reminder, the Favorites podcast is presented by Bet365. Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. That's why you get more boost with them than with anyone else. Every day, they power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more. Bet365 boosts specific markets, your winnings, and even parlays, and they don't stop there. Keep an eye out for their biggest and best odds with the incredible Super Boosts. Check out the boost and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, North Carolina, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, or 18 and older in Kentucky. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, restrictions apply. Simon and I are back with our next episode of The Faves on the Action Network YouTube page. Go subscribe. Watch us live there if you'd like. Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern, we are covering our favorite bets of the NFL season before we get into the meat of the year, where we will be making our 5 picks on the show for the contest. So favorites.actionnetwork.com to sign up. Download us from Spotify, Apple Pods, wherever you get your pods. Rate, review, subscribe, leave us 5 stars, say whatever you want. Feedback is a gift. Till next time, love you.